Are the Ten Commandments a copy of the Negative Confessions? Yeah, what's going on, party people? In the place to be. I go by the name of the BK Apologist, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city, Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's popping? Happy Labor Day weekend to each and all. I hope those of us who have the day off are enjoying it, and those who don't have the day off, hey, still enjoy your day regardless of the situation, right? And of course, I want to say what's up to the party people in the chat. We got DFC Diatribe, and that's all we have is DFC Diatribe. So I appreciate you being here.
And there's Phil Fox.
Phil's in there. Okay.
There's more people coming because
I know it takes a while. This latency thing. I know.
Yeah.
We got the real American Phil Fox on the check-in. We got Dana Owens. We got my man Romy Rome in the house. And of course, if you have not already, please like, share, and subscribe. I'm still, striving to get to the 4,000 sub mark. It'd be greatly appreciated if you could tell a friend that's him again. And if you like how it goes down with the BK, you can show your support via PayPal with the link that's pinned on top of the chat. Or if you'd like to be a monthly subscriber, you could become a Patreon, where you could get an assortment of goodies to enhance your personal Bible study. And with me today is a very, very good friend of mine. He has very different names. We like to call him Dr. Doom, Dr. Detroit, apologist in Detroit is in the building. Ladies and gentlemen.
All right, and this is going out to one of our anonymously to one of our viewers. Go Shorty, it's your birthday. We're gonna party like it's your birthday. Well, actually, it is your birthday. Happy birthday!
Happy
birthday
happy
to you know who.
To you know who. Yes. So as you guys know pretty much about my channel, all of us, as urban apologists, our goal is to defend the gospel from different heretical teachings that attack Black and brown believers, and we all have our different lanes of expertise. Apologist in Detroit here he's Mr. Human Flourishing, talking about social justice, biblical social justice. And, with me, I tend to lean towards dealing with the conscious community. And, one of the things that the conscious community likes to do is to critique Christianity. But specifically, the critique is that somehow we are ripping off from a much earlier belief system from the Kemetic worldview. So apologies in Detroit, of course, you're not new to that kind of critique. What do you think when people say that to you, that Christianity is just a mere ripoff of Kemetic spirituality?
I think that people mistakenly try to superimpose our modern standards onto the ancient world. One of the things that we have to realize is that when we are studying, literature from the ancient world, that they put their literature together differently than us. We have to, the way that we think of literacy is much different than the way that they think of literacy. That paper is common. We throw paper out. We have to recycle it because we've been wasting it and cutting down trees. And it was so difficult and challenging for them to make paper. They were very specific about what they wrote on it, and the average person didn't need to have the ability to write. So sometimes you got a third party or a second party writing for an author, so you get amanuensis. They were very communally oriented. So you'll have whole groups of people coming together, the leaders of that, the elders coming together, and they're all contributing to the thoughts that are being, but then there's maybe one leader who is like the leader among leaders. And so that person's name get placed on it when in reality it's a community. So yeah. One of the challenges I think that we often face is the fact that in the ancient world, things were different, and their standards, the way that they put their literature together is much different than the way that we put our literature together. And one of the aspects of the different ways that they put it together is they often, sometimes they use polemics. And then so there might be similarities because one person is in a sense taking shots at another person. And then another thing is there were common things that were believed about the world, and therefore you might see some commonality because they're living in the same world, they're seeing some of the same things, and there's common enough crossover in the belief where you might see some commonality. So there's a variety of reasons, and this is just a very short list off the dome of some of the reasons that people need to be familiar with the differences in way that they put literature together in us, so that when we encounter their literature, we don't try to assume that it was done the same ways that ours are, and use standards to kind of assess it by.
No, that was great. And I've said this a billion times, and I'll say it again. This idea of the owning and stealing of intellectual property wasn't a known thing in the ancient Near East. Now, if you want to prove me wrong, find someone from the Iron or Bronze Age saying that they own a particular concept. Then show me someone from that same age saying that that concept was stolen from them. Just show me that. Show me a primary letter, a stela, papyri from the Bronze or Iron Age saying they own a concept, and then someone else saying that concept originally came from them. You're not going to find that in the ancient Near East. You're just not. They didn't think that way, So now, of course, they say various things about, well, Jesus came from Horus, Jesus came from Atum, Jesus came from, various pantheons of Kemet. And they've also said that the Ten Commandments is somehow a ripoff of the negative confessions. And to give you more context in that critique, I want to play this short video right now.
Entity still. We're governed, Christians are governed by their code of conduct on this earthly plane, are governed by the Ten Commandments.
Yes.
That the Word of God, or did that come from something called the Book of the Dead?
Well, I recall James Henry Breasted, who was a famous American Egyptologist at the University of Chicago, established the Oriental Institute in, I think, around 1935. James Henry Breasted got in trouble for saying that the Ten Commandments were derived from the 42 admonitions of Ma'at. What does that mean? Ma'at in ancient Kemet was the overriding force that governed everything in the universe. She represented the principles of justice, balance, harmony, and that there were 42 admonitions of Ma'at. Some of them were, I have not stolen, I have not robbed, I have not defrauded offerings, I have not polluted myself, I have not polluted the land, I have not committed adultery, I have not spoken ill against God. And so it is from the 42 admonitions of Ma'at that Moses derived the Ten Commandments. And so there is a profound difference between an admonition of Ma'at, where one declares your innocence and says, I have not done X, Y, and Z, and a commandment where people without a profound understanding of Ma'at must be commanded not to do things that a person in their right mind would know not to do. So these are cultural differences that are based upon another culture appropriating aspects of African culture and interpreting it through their own cultural lens.
When you begin to see how the stories of Moses giving us the law, the Ten Commandments, go back and read the Ten Commandments. You'll find out, first of all, there's two different renditions of the Ten Commandments in Genesis. One says one thing, one says the other. But the Ten Commandments of Moses is based on an Egyptian story called negative confessions.
You mentioned that the Ten Commandments, when we were in Egypt, you mentioned that the Ten Commandments that we are aware of are derived from 42 commandments that carry another name, the negative confessions.
Or admonitions to Goddess Ma'at.
I see.
And they're thousands of years older than the so-called Ten Commandments. You see,
no, we have some visuals that are on the that you took on the wall. Let's there it is.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Those are the negative confessions.
Those are the some of the 42 negative confessions.
Now, when you say negative confessions, that means
because they start in negative. Hail Ma'at, I have not killed man or woman. Hail Ma'at, I have not made light thy bushel. Hail Ma'at, I have not spoken ill of the God.
So these are...
These would be the English version.
I have not as opposed to thou shalt
not.
The right social and moral development of mankind in the Nile Valley, which is 3,000 years older than that of the Hebrews, contributed essentially to the formation of Hebrew literature. Our moral heritage therefore derives from a wider human past enormously older than the Hebrews. Hear what he said? Our moral heritage. See, because the people in this part of the world want you to think that the Ten Commandments is the source of our moral heritage in Western civilization. He just blew that out the water. He said our moral heritage therefore derives from a wider human past enormously older than the Hebrews. And it has come to us rather through them, through the Hebrews, than from them. This is the man that started the Oriental Institute of University of Chicago, the #1 archaeology university on the planet.
Archaeology experts have found absolutely no evidence whatsoever that Hebrew Jews lived as slaves in Egypt or of their exodus from Egypt. The plain truth is that Moses didn't lead Hebrew slaves out of Egypt any more than Charlton Heston did. There is not one shred of archaeological evidence for the existence of Moses or of any of the Bible's main cast of Hebrew characters, from Abraham to Jacob to Joseph to King David to King Solomon.
Green. What does Green say? No direct archaeological evidence according to Time, December 18, 1995. Isaac Green. No direct archaeological evidence according to Time.
All right, so we'll stop it there. So as you see, various people in what we would now call the conscious community bring forth this particular critique about the Ten Commandments is somehow a derivative or rip-off, plagiarized from Kemet. Now, they did try to say that it was different in the sense that, but the difference is ours is bad, theirs is good. Right? That's basically
ours is negative. We know not to do it. Y'all so stupid. We got to command you not to do it.
Right, exactly. So with that, let's get into this. And this is something similar to what Apologist of Detroit just said. Actually, can you read this for us, bro?
Absolutely. As a result, we are not looking at ancient literature to try to decide whether Israel borrowed from some of the literature that was known to them. It is to be expected that the Israelites held many concepts and perspectives in common with the rest of the ancient world. This is far different from suggesting literature was borrowed or copied. This is not even a case of Israel being influenced by the people around them. Rather, we simply recognize the common conceptual world that existed in ancient times. We should therefore not speak of Israel being influenced by the world. They were a part of that world. Excerpt from The Lost World of Genesis by John H. Walton.
Right. We tend to forget that Israel was part of the ancient Near East. They did not exist in a vacuum. So there's nothing to take if it's there. They're all there. All these different, kingdoms, they overlap, they trade with one another. They're very well aware of the other communities and cultures. So it's not like they had to get it from somewhere. They were already in the thick of things. Okay. So if you could read this as well, Chris.
The texts serve as sources of information for us to formulate the shape of each culture's way of thinking. In most areas, there is more similarity between Israel and its neighbors than there is between Israel and our 21st century Western world. As another example, even though today we believe in one God, the God of Israel, and therefore share with them this basic element of faith, the views of deity in the ancient world served as the context for Israel's understanding of deity. It is true that the God of the Bible is far different from gods of the ancient cultures, but Israel understood its God in reference to what others around them believed. The Lost World of Genesis 1, right. John H. Walton.
And that's why it's so important for us to understand the cultural context in which these things are written in. Because the Bible, like Chris said earlier, is responding to the beliefs and ideologies of their neighboring nations. But if we don't know what these guys believe, we miss the punchline. Okay, so it's really important for us to understand not only the immediate context, but the cultural context as well. And that's what we're going to do today, right? We're going to look at the context first of the Ten Commandments. Like, how is these commandments being utilized, right? So, in order to bind two parties together, such as Yahweh and the people of Israel, a covenant would be made whereby a kingship was created that was as strong as the bonds of a family. In modern society, this idea is communicated most clearly in adoption and marriage. When two people become married, they create a family relationship with all the attendant responsibilities that previously did not exist. Likewise, when a family adopts a child, that child becomes as if she were physically born to the parents. Marriage and adoption join people as family members who were once not family members. Similarly, covenants in the ancient Near East made families out of those who were not family. Two basic types of covenants existed in the ancient Near East: the parity treaty between equal parties, and the Caesarean vassal treaty between a greater and a lesser party. In Caesarean vassal treaties, the greater party, i.e., the Caesarean, provided benefits such as military protection and land grants to the lesser party, i.e., the vassal. In response, the vassal owned the Caesarean financial tribute and consummate loyalty. Consequently, vassals could have only one Caesarean, for to take another lord or father would be tantamount to treason. The covenant Yahweh established with Israel at Mount Sinai exhibits striking parallels with Hittite Caesarean vassal treaties, which had 6 basic features. 1, a preamble that identifies Caesarean. 2, a historical prologue that recounts the previous relationship between the parties. 3, covenant stipulations to which the vassal must agree. 4, provisions for periodic reading and safekeeping of the covenant. 5, witness to the covenant. And 6, blessings and curses should the vassal either keep or fail to keep the covenant. The Sinaitic covenant contains all 6 of these characteristics. So when we look at the covenant, it's a contract, specifically Caesarean vassal contract. Yahweh is the Caesarean, Israel's the vassal.
I feel like you just described the book of Deuteronomy.
Pretty much. That's exactly what this is. But I want you to focus on number 3, right? Covenant stipulations to which the vassal must agree. These are the commandments that we read in Scripture. That's what the commandments are in this covenant. They are stipulations, right? God gives us a preamble. He tells us, that he saved Israel. Now, notice, he saves them before he gives them commandments. Just to throw that out there. He saves them, and once he brings them out and rescues them from Egypt and brings them to this mountain, then he contracts with them. Like, now that you're saved, these are the things I would like for you to do, as opposed to you need to do these things in order to be saved. As Christians, that should ring kind of familiar, okay? So, because we're not saved by our own works. God had to save us. And now that we're saved, God expects us to behave in a certain manner to show that we've been saved, right? That's not a new concept. We see this here in the Hebrew Bible, right? So we see covenant stipulations to which the vassal must agree. That's what the 10 Commandments are. Before we continue, Chris, you have anything you'd like to add before we go on?
Nope. Let's keep it moving.
All right, cool. So now, let's look at the context of the negative confessions. All right, this is from Disorder in the Court, Sanctioned Dishonesty in the Hall of Two Ma'ats by Hannah Griffin, University of Colorado. Chris, if you could be so kind to read this.
Absolutely. Ancient Egypt has provided modern scholarship with some of the earliest extant records of a highly developed conception of judgment after death. A form of post-mortem judgment was present as far back as the Old Kingdom, beginning in the 3rd millennium BCE 1. The codification of the judgment of the dead did not appear until the 15th century BCE in the book of Going Forth by Day, the primary funerary literature of the New Kingdom. The core of the judgment scene was the weighing of the heart ritual. The book of Going Forth by Day, more commonly known today as the Book of the Dead, contains spells that address the judgment process. chapter 125. Specifically, the second declaration of innocence section in chapter 330b dash 5 are the two spells that most directly impact the ritual.
Right. So right off the bat, right, the Perep Em Heru, the Book of the Dead, already vastly different than what we just read from the Ten Commandments. Right? The Ten Commandments are stipulations within a Caesarean vassal treaty. What we see here is a collection of spells for one to try to get to the afterlife. So right off the bat, vastly two different things. Okay, so let's continue. Chris?
They were meant to ensure that the deceased passed judgment and entered the afterlife proper. They were, in essence, methods to work around the uncertainties and obstacles of a divine justice system which was dedicated by divine order, referred to as Ma'at. This article will show that the substantial use of magical means to ensure triumphant result in the judgment hails reflects the relentless desire to secure a successful passage into the afterlife.
Chris, is there any uncertainties in the Ten Commandments?
No, there are no uncertainties in the Ten Commandments. They're pretty clear imperatives.
Right. But yet the people of Kemet, they felt like there was some uncertainties to how one can arrive to the afterlife. So they needed spells, magic, as a workaround to make sure that they put themselves in the best possible position to make it to heaven. All right. The divine justice system thus relied and was centered on the principles of Ma'at. These principles dictated which deeds were considered acceptable and which ones were not. The adherence to these rules determined whether the deceased was worthy. But did the Egyptians take into account human nature? It is safe to say that no human being has ever lived a flawless life. However, perfection was needed to balance against Ma'at. Would the Egyptian system of justice allow for minor misdeeds? If a person was generally good and generally tried to live their life in accordance with Ma'at, but committed some minor mistakes, would they still have suffered a fate possible erasure from existence? Would this possibility have been tolerable to the Egyptians? It would be argued here that the uncertainty of the outcome during the ritual of the weighing of the heart, in which led Egyptians to incorporate the use of magical spells, specifically those found in chapter 125 and chapter 30b, to ensure a positive outcome. So, we saw in the previous video about, they told you that they did these things as opposed to had to be commanded to do these things. Well, no one could do the 42 negative confessions, just like everybody can't keep the 10 commandments. But in the vassal treaty, when someone broke the law, what would happen? What could they do to rectify that, Chris, when they did sin?
Ask that question again.
If someone in the Old Testament, right, broke the commandments, is there something that they could do to deal with that situation?
Yeah, they were commanded to give an offering, a sin offering, of an animal sacrifice or a grain sacrifice or such.
Right. There was some sort of atonement system.
Yes.
So that when you broke it, you could do these things to stay in good contract with Yahweh. The problem with the Egyptian deities, there was no such atonement. There wasn't. There wasn't anything that you can use that once you broke Ma'at to rectify yourself. You had to be perfect. But the Egyptians knew they weren't. Even those who strive for some sort of Ma'atic perfection knew they couldn't. That's why they created these spells. All right, so let's keep going here. The first spell to reduce the uncertainty regarding successful passage into the afterlife is in chapter 30b. In the Papyrus of Ani, this spell and vignette depicting the weighing of the heart appeared near the beginning of the scroll. The spell is preceded by hymns and prayers to the two most important gods in the Egyptian religion, Re and Osiris. And the spell reads as follows. Now, usually you find this in the scrolls, but what they tend to discover is that these heart scarabs would have that spell inscribed, as you see here, in the back of the scarab, and that's for a particular reason. But let's read the spell, and we're getting to the negative confession, but we gotta get to this first. Oh, my heart, which I had from my mother. Oh, my heart, which I had from my mother. Oh, my heart of my different ages. Do not stand up as a witness against me. Do not be opposed to me in the tribunal. Do not be hostile to me in the presence of the keeper of the balance. For you are my ka, which was in my body, the protector who made my members hell. Go forth to the happy place whereto we speed. Do not make my name stink to the entourage who made men. Do not tell lies about me in the presence of the God. It is indeed well that you should hear. So it's a spell telling your own heart not to snitch on you. Why would you need that if you was able to complete all the precepts of Ma'at? Unless, of course, you knew that you could not. Right? The Egyptians believed that the intellect resided in the heart rather than the brain. In other words, they believed the heart to be the center of one's being. This is the reasoning behind the practice of not removing the heart during mummification, despite the removal of all other organs. All of one's thoughts and memories were thus sought to reside in the heart. As Binas Amil Naguib aptly states, the heart carries the thought of memory, conscious, or more exactly, of memory as witness. As this statement alludes to, it was believed that the heart became a separate entity from the deceased in the afterlife. It had the ability to speak, and more importantly, it had the ability to speak out against its owner during the judgment scene in the Hall of Tumat. If one was deceptive in the tribunal, they risked their heart speaking out against them. The concern was thus that the heart would sabotage the deceased's chances of passing judgment. This is an uncertainty that could not be tolerated. The purpose of chapter 30, spell 30, is to silence the heart and prevent it from speaking out against its owner in the tribunal, thereby preventing irregularities in the courtroom. So they needed a spell because they believed that the heart outside of its owner could turn around and be like, yeah, this dude's lying. Yeah, he said, I have not lied. I have not did that. The heart could turn around and be like, I call lie. You're lying. So the fact that they knew that that could happen, they made the spell to quiet down the heart. Like, listen, stop turning state's evidence on me. Me and you, we're trying to get to heaven. Shut up. Yeah, I know I couldn't be perfect. Me and you both know that. Shut up. Let's keep it moving here, heart. All right. Do you see any of this in the Caesarean Vassal Treaty in Sinai, Chris?
No, I don't see anything to look like that, but it still might be plagiarism. You know how it is, man.
Yeah, okay. So let's continue now. Actually, you could do this one, Chris.
Chapter 125 is a long and intricate spell centered on allowing the deceased to enter the hall of judgment. The spell outlines the appropriate prayers to be said and how to declare one's innocence before the tribunal. The part that we shall focus upon is the second declaration of innocence. The second declaration of innocence consists of 42 lines, each addressing a different judge and a different offense.
Continue.
The deceased was meant to state the name of the judge and then deny the offense over which the judge presided. One of the magical components of the text was that it granted the deceased knowledge, the true name of each of the judges. In ancient Egypt, knowing a person's true name granted you power over them. As will be explored in greater detail below, the important element of retained here is that all of these offenses had to be denied for the individual to proceed into the afterlife.
All right, so these negative confessions are spells. So before they can deny the sin, or in Kemetic speak, ishfet, in order for them to deny ishfet, they had to say the name of the judge. But they believe that by knowing the real name of the judge, you had power over the judge. Why is that a big deal? Right? The second declaration of innocence in the Papyrus of Ani had two parts. While the first required the deceased to address each of the judges by name, the second required them to deny the offense that each judge persuaded over. The second component, the denial of the 42 misdeeds listed, allowed for a process of purification to take place. While it was likely that the deceased didn't commit all of these misdeeds, it was also highly improbable that they didn't commit any. The importance of knowing the deity's name could be at play in the second declaration of innocence. If the names of the judges presented in the second declaration of innocence were their true names and not aliases, by speaking their names, the deceased would have gained power over the judges. In other words, if one of the judges were to notice any irregularities in the deceased case, knowledge of their name could prevent the judge from speaking out. So these spells, which these people don't, a lot of these people that critique us, they don't tell us that there's two parts to the spell. They go right into that, I have not killed, I have not lied. Like, before they say that, they got to say the name of the judge.
Supposed to say, Fredo, I have not killed.
Right. Chris, I have not lied. Colin, I have not done this. Right? And by me saying your name first, I gain control over you. So that when I say I didn't do it, even if you don't believe me, you can't say it because I have control over you.
Right. Your omnipotent God loses his omnipotence.
Right. That's the spell. That's part of the spell. The knowledge of the true names of the judges and how to address them therefore allowed the deceased the ability to further ensure their success by possessing the ability to exert power over the judges, if needed. By possessing this power, the deceased held the ability to influence both tests and cover their bases. It is important to note that the text do not explicitly indicate that the deceased could exert control over judges. However, given the stated desire to hold control over the gods in chapter 93 and 124, it is not particularly difficult to believe that the deceased would use the power of the judge's true name to ensure a successful outcome if given the option. The control aspect may be superfluous as the purpose of the second declaration of innocence is purification. Nevertheless, the Egyptians equipped themselves with every possible advantage to ensure success in their trial. The spells found in chapter 30 and chapter 125 were clearly intended to provide the deceased with additional tools to ensure their continuity into the afterlife. These spells were widely used and appear in many tombs and graves in the New Kingdom period onwards. The widespread use of magical tools meant to circumvent the uncertainties and obstacles of the judges scene demonstrates a strong desire to enter the afterlife and the lengths to which the Egyptians were willing to go to secure a successful passage into eternity. These magical practices not only existed because the Egyptians believed in the necessity of undergoing the trial of judgment, but also because they were unwilling to leave their fate to chance. To enter the afterlife, the heart of the deceased needed to balance against Ma'at, the purest form of truth and order. So, and I think elsewhere it's going to say, these two spells, the spell in the heart scarab and the negative confessions, worked in conjunction to get you over the hump. Because again, no man can say I have done no wrong in this world, right? The people of Kemet knew that. So it's like, all right, so we're going to have to finagle a little something here. So I'm going to say I didn't do these things, but before I say it, I'm going to say your name so to keep your mouth shut. And since the heart knows I'm doing this, I need a separate spell for my heart. But like, listen, I'm about to do something. It's a little gray. Shut up. I'm doing this for the both of us. Right? Does that sound like the Ten Commandments to you, Chris?
That does not sound. It sounds more like Destiny's Child. Say my name, say my name.
Stupid.
Than the Ten Commandments.
So, if any wrongdoing were revealed, the heart, however slightly, would not balance against Ma'at. If the deceased was not able to cleanse themselves of all their misdeeds, notice they're the ones that have to cleanse themselves, not the gods. They got to do it, right? Cleanse themselves of all their misdeeds, they would thus fail. It was clear to the Egyptians that humans, even the righteous, were not perfect. Therefore, to ensure continuity of the righteous into the afterlife, they needed to deny and thus mitigate the flaws of being human through magic. Sounds like a works-based salvation to me. What do you think, Chris?
Yep, sounds like a works-based salvation to me too.
However, This is not to imply that the deceased were maliciously attempting to cheat their way into the afterlife. Most ancient Egyptians believed and followed the Ma'an path, but they did not want to leave any part of their trial to chance. For the possibility of erasure and no longer existing was an intolerable outcome to be avoided at all costs. Since no human could possibly lead a flawless life, and flaws were not acceptable to the tribunal, a magical solution was developed to circumvent the conundrum. Thus, chapter 30 and chapter 125 were two methods designed to remedy the problem of perfection and ensure the desired results. So, do I have any more? No, that's it. So, the Ten Commandments. Now, of course, there's more than 10 commandments, but the commandments are stipulations between the Caesarean Lord, Yahweh, and the vassal Israel. Whereas these negative confessions was a spell to confound the judges to make a quick getaway into heaven. Two vastly different things. Two very different things. Right? We're talking contract law. We're talking hocus pocus. So now, are some of the words similar? Sure. But the context, vastly different. Yes.
But that's like saying, like, if we said, do not murder today, or murder is a bad thing, that we're borrowing from ancient ethics. When, it's like, no, this is a bad thing. You shouldn't do that. So,
and by the way, the Israelites knew murder was bad prior to the covenant. Right, it wasn't like they just finally discovered, oh, wow, murder is bad. Gee, right. I didn't know. That wasn't the case.
Man, what Moses did to that soldier was not was not good. No,
right.
Yeah, but yeah, that's one of the things that kind of stuck on me. And then maybe because I'm not super familiar with Egyptology, but in my mind I feel like I remember that like this all of this business about the like these temple texts and Book of the Dead and such was originally for like the pharaohs and the wealthiest people, like the oligarchs of the society, and it was only over a period of time that it kind of trickled down to everyday people could participate in the afterlife. But originally it was just like for the rich folks, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, I'm not crazy. Okay, I feel like I remember reading or hearing that at some point.
Yeah, that's definitely the case.
I mean, but that's a whole nother, aspect of this, when they're claiming similarities, or they're claiming, because it's like, no, because in this is universal. What you see in the Ten Commandments are universal laws, and they're even universal beyond Israel, because if you actually pay attention to the narrative in if in the Pentateuch, you're paying attention to the narrative. The narrative is foreigners can come, sojourn, proselytize, and participate. They can participate versus simply indigenous people only being exclusive to indigenous people, let alone only exclusive to aristocrats, the richest and most influential and political leaders amongst us. So yeah.
And the thing that I appreciate about the author of the paper we just read, he didn't make out the Egyptians like these sly, slick people that were just trying to get over. That wasn't the case. It wasn't that they were trying to get over. It's that they understood that as good as I am, I have flaws. And the Egyptian gods could care less. I could only make it if I'm perfect. I know, because I'm honest with myself, I am not perfect. So they're stuck now. It's like, how do we get to the other side when they expect perfection, and I know I'm not perfect? For Israel, they had a remedy for that, right? In fact, once a year, it was called Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, where they reset the temple or the tabernacle, depending on what age we're talking about, and forgave the sins of the whole nation. There was no atonement process for the Egyptian when it was time to cross over. So they had to finagle something, some sort of spell, to basically to trick the gods into allowing them to safe passage. How is that the same? In fact, that's so sad that now when you understand how they saw the afterlife, when they were first given the gospel, of course they ran and received it quickly. Like, what you mean? You mean not only am I forgiven, that God Himself died so my sins can be forgiven, my ishfet, my imperfections, oh, and I get a crown, and I get a new name, and I get to sit in the same throne with the King of the universe? Yeah, sign me up for that one. That sounds pretty good. Because there's other stuff that I got, I'm stuck. I got to be Doctor Strange to get to heaven. I need the eye of Agamotto and the cloak of levitation to make it through. But with Yahweh, I just need to believe in Him and pledge my allegiance. And my sins will be forgiven. The things that I could not change, you will fix for me because you love me. The Egyptian gods had no love for their people. Either you're upright or you're done. Therefore, I got to make these spells. I got to do some, look the other way while I run and slide into home base. So to say that these 10 commandments come from these spells, it's just hard. It's hard to make that connection. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, that's I think that sociologically speaking, we all of us have like certain beliefs that we kind of we were kind of socially and through environment socialized into, and then when you're getting those views challenged, it's hard because this is what you believe, this is what in many cases what many people around you believe, and you feel like there's a sense of betrayal. There's a sense of, I can't possibly have been wrong for this much of my life, that you have to kind of overcome in order for you to be able to be willing to accept truth. But the part of the path to truth is hearing critique, is hearing others who have studied these things to highlight the inconsistencies, highlight the reason for the parallels, and more importantly, the distinction of the differences, so that you can see that these two different religions are advocating or advancing two different paradigms. And as such, in this particular case, what do you want? Do you want to potentially stand before this tribunal of gods and have to remember people's names and spell your way through to reduce the weight of your heart to be lighter than the feather, so that you can pass into this afterlife? Or do you like the eternal security that rests not on you, but on the declaration of the righteous judge, declaring you righteous and welcoming you on His word? So, which one fits the bill, and which one would you prefer? If on a practical level, which one would you prefer? I think in both cases, the latter makes more sense, and the latter is the latter not only makes more sense, but the latter is what you would prefer if you had a preference of the two. So, yeah,
right. And I think that's what we see in history, that when the gospel came to like Alexandria, Egypt, man, it was embraced quickly because of that, of what you just said, Chris. So it's no wonder that quite early in the life of Christianity, we had these people of Kemet quickly declare that Jesus is Lord, because of they quote unquote, no pun intended, weighed their options, right? So
yeah, or even the proto gospel of the signs that Yahweh performed during the Exodus,
right?
In the proto gospel. I mean, there weren't only Israelites who left Egypt. There was a whole community of people coming out of Egypt. So what nationality did that make more than likely the rest of those people? They were Egyptians amongst the community that came into it. And this is why even in the Pentateuch, you see these allusions to these sojourners, this community of people that are here, there with you, and how they can participate, how they can become a part of this community as well. So even in the Old Covenant with the proto good news, you still see Egyptians coming along and participating.
Absolutely. So, and that's it. I hope this was edifying to you guys, that just taking time out to just let's look at 10 commandments. Let's look at these negative confessions, and let's see the context in which they're used. And when you take the time to do that, you will see clearly that one has nothing to do with the other at all. So, Chris, I'm going to give you the final word before we're out of here. What are your final thoughts, sir?
Okay, before you get out of here, we should talk about the conference.
This is true.
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. We have a question.
Because we forgot that last time.
Do you think that people who consider themselves spiritual in the Kemetic community actually believe their afterlife will look like this? That these things will literally happen, not symbolic? Well, I mean, I think, and Dino, I think you know this too. There's basically two types of ideologies within the conscious community when it comes to Kemet, right? And the two people who embody these things is Jabari Osase and Reggie Mulberry, right? Because Jabari Osase, he's a Kemetic high priest. So he believes in the spiritual world. He believes that there is a realm of outside of our reality that we can contact to and deal with. Whereas somebody like Reggie, right, he sees Kemet in a more secular way and uses the accoutrements of Kemeticism as a form of Black nationalism and politics, right? So, and sometimes those two guys, and you've seen them in videos, they will butt heads, even though they both are pro-Kemet, but they look at it in two vastly, well, Jabari will say they look at it the same way, but this guy won't, Reggie will say otherwise. But that's what we have, right? There are some people in the community that believe spiritual, right? Now, if they believe specifically in this afterlife, I don't know, because there's so many different. There isn't a systematic theology of Kemetic spirituality right now, right? So there's a lot of piecemeal going on when it comes to the spiritual aspect of ancient Kemet, right? They're reconstructing from what they have, right? So some might see the afterlife like this, some may not. I don't know, because I don't know every denomination of Kemetic spirituality, and there are different denominations, So, but
I want to kind of respond to that question too, on a more practical level. Like I was kind of, me and BK were chatting right before we came on live, and I joked and I was like, man, I didn't realize I knew so many Kemetic people. Like part of my I was sort of adopted by this family when I was young. Long story. Anyway, I lived with them, and the mother who was taking care of me, her sister and her husband and their family were Kemeticists, and now they have a whole community of Kemeticists. They got like a 30-unit apartment that's like a commune for Kemetics, and they are very devout in the sense that whatever it is that they consciously believe about Kemeticism, they practice. So they're very nature oriented, and there's a bunch of stuff like that. And when you talk to them, they know their stuff. I would be surprised that if I had a conversation with them about the afterlife, and that they would even be aware of this, what we just went over right here. I think that what they more practice it from the perspective of the 42 laws of Ma'at are this guide for life. And so they see it more like the 10 Commandments, ironically, as sort of like, hey, here's not in the sense of the original context of the 10 Commandments, but in the sense of seeing these virtues, these are virtue ethics that are guides for life, and seeing the practice of them as sort of making you a righteous person in this world. So they're not really thinking about the afterlife as much as they are thinking about the 42, which encompasses the primary two that we were talking about today, related to people getting to the afterlife. And so I would say that's consistent, because there was also this Kemetic bookstore next to the barbershop that I go to, and I would talk to them. And so my experience has been like they aren't necessarily consumed with life after death. They're more consumed with life down here on earth, and how their convictions about Kemetic about Kemeticism and African indigenous, our history as indigenous African people, our ancestors, and then how that impacts how they live their lives right here, right now. So that would be my, if I had to ask. And matter of fact, I might actually go out on a limb and ask one of them just to confirm that.
Right. I hope this helps, Dinu, and you know a lot of this stuff anyway, Dinu. So, but yeah, I mean, again, a lot of them are just trying to figure out how to achieve what their quote unquote Kemetic ancestors did, spiritually speaking, in today's time. And in a weird way, we're kind of doing the same thing in the sense that as Christians, right, we're always trying to see, well, how can we emulate the first century church? Difference is we have a lot more data. We have a whole lot more data, and our data makes more sense, as you see here, right? So, but that's the hermeneutic spiral, right? We have to understand what the text meant back then, so that then we ask ourselves, well, if this applies to me today, how do I apply it in this modern era, right? That's what we do as believers, right? They're trying to do the same thing. One, they don't have as much data, and two, the data is just, to be quite honest, is antithetical to what we have. Which, once again, when the gospel was given to these ancient Kemetic people, they took hold of it rather quickly. Okay, so, but yeah, to your point, apologies to Troy. Something's coming up in October. Can you talk to people about that?
Yeah, October 13th through 14th, we're going to have the second Contenders Conference here in Detroit, Michigan. It was actually in the suburb of Detroit, Michigan. But yeah, it's going to be a great conference. This year's a 2-day conference. Yours truly is going to be speaking on biblical justice. BK here is going to be speaking on Kemeticism. At this conference, we're going to be addressing Hebrew Israelism by Elder Mike Holloway. We're going to be addressing a host of other topics as well. So it's a great conference. Last year, we had about 200 something people. It was great. It was great social community. It was great learning from some professional speakers. And so, yeah, this year we're doubling up, doing 2 days instead of one. And I'm excited. I want to encourage everybody, if you have time and you got a few pennies stored away, this is going to be a great opportunity not only to learn some good theology, but it's going to be a great time of fellowship. It's going to be a lot of people here from around the country that are that you might be friends with on social media platforms that you're going to get to meet in purpose, share a meal with, and such. So, highly encourage you to come if you can. It's only $20 to participate today. I think tomorrow the early bird ends and it'll be $25 to participate. So if you want to save yourself $5, sign up today. It's a great day. It's the perfect day to sign up, the last day of the early bird.
Yeah, and also for me, this is the first time I get to teach at a conference. Yes, you see me do sermons in my church and all that, and that's, and I'm eternally grateful for that. But I've never been able to speak at a conference before. And this is my first chance, and I just want to thank everybody at Contenders for giving me that opportunity. Chris being my advocate, helping me, to be a part of this. And I would love to see everybody here to support me in my first endeavor in doing this, So, and, a lot of us, I still haven't seen a lot of you guys in the same room yet, and I would love for us to be in the same room and just give you guys a hug and just, just enjoy, organic fellowship as opposed to, the virtual, so please, I put the link in the chat. Hopefully I'll see a lot of you guys there. So, and with that, any last words, bro?
Oh no, happy to kind of come on today. I'm sitting at home. I was like, oh yeah, I'm down. Let's go and to participate. Wearing my if you like my shirt, this is a BK design. Will somebody grab the link for this one? This says Israel in Egyptian hieroglyphics.
Yep. So, all right, guys. So with that being said, apologies in Detroit and BK signing off. Peace.